Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's Safeguarding and Education Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's Thursday the 4th of December at 2 p.m. 21 more sleeps to Christmas. Okay, so let's start with apologies. We have apologies from Wayne Luca, Councillor Wayne Luca, Councillor Antonio Fantini, Councillor Sonny Edwards, and Councillor Helen Williams. Do we have any declarations of interest at all? No? Okay. Okay, so it just moves straight on to... Okay, so item 3 on the agenda, we have the Staffordshire Domestic Abuse Strategy 25 to 29. I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves or whether you want me to introduce you all.
I can just crack on, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay then. I'll hand it over to Councillor Anthony Screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Just forgive me, I am laid up with a cold, so hopefully you can all understand what I'm saying. I'm pleased to be bringing the Staffordshire Domestic Abuse Strategy to this Overview and Scrutiny Committee. As you are all aware, community safety and resilience are priorities for our new Cabinet, and my portfolio is focused on this area to ensure that we deliver against this priority. It is essential to ensure that residents feel secure, supported and empowered within their communities. Domestic abuse is a key area of focus within our new community safety priority. We are reviewing our approach to this and have drafted a new domestic abuse strategy. And our new strategy aims to put victims and their families at the centre of everything we do and work together to improve their outcomes. Prevent domestic abuse before it happens. Hold perpetrators to account through the criminal justice system and support them to change their behaviour. Facilitate cooperation and collaboration across Staffordshire system. Holding ourselves and partners to account for the delivery of our shared outcomes and our desire to improve the lives of people in Staffordshire. Recent changes in governance arrangements have resulted in Staffordshire County Council working with our partners to develop our own domestic abuse strategy for the county. This strategy will need to coexist with separate governance structures of Stoke-on-Trent City, who has its own DA strategy. While this presents challenges, it also offers an opportunity for the County Council to demonstrate leadership, resilience and innovation. I am committed to ensuring our strategy is locally accountable, data-driven and adaptable, using all available tools, departments and resources to deliver effective services, embedding a robust review and scrutiny structure to maintain transparency and continuous improvement. I want to emphasise how committed I am to ensuring that our strategy delivers protection, prevention and justice for all affected individuals. I believe a strong domestic abuse strategy must be underpinned by reliable and insightful data. We will challenge the data underpinning the work in this area to make sure we have confidence in the future, that the strategy is victim-focused, it is tough on crime, and the contract arrangements deliver value for money. I have requested that our data analytical team help us better understand patterns, including risk factors, the impact of interventions, and how we measure success. It's also important that we strengthen collaboration between key partners like the police, social care and commission providers to support real-time data capture and ensure we're working from a shared evidence base. Data capture can't just be a technical process, it's a vital part of how we improve outcomes. To ensure that we have a strategy that's effective and responsive, we need to keep refining how we collect, share and use information, and it is my ambition to ensure that we do that. I will now hand over to Catherine, who will take you through the report and strategy in more detail, and happy to take any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. As Councillor Screen has outlined, there have been recent changes to domestic abuse governance arrangements in Staffordshire. The previous joint Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Domestic Abuse Board has been replaced with 2 new boards, one for Staffordshire and one for Stoke. Although we no longer share a partnership board, we are still looking for opportunities to work in partnership with Stoke and with those agencies that cover the whole of the county and the city area, for example the police, to make absolutely sure that we're taking a consistent approach. In line with the change to the governance arrangements, a new partnership Staffordshire domestic abuse strategy has been drafted. The content of this strategy is currently being consulted on, and we will be taking the strategy to Cabinet on the 21st of January as part of this consultation. In terms of how the strategy has been developed, we've used a wide range of local data and information. This includes a thorough needs assessment. The assessment doesn't just rely on one data source, but considers all of the information that's available to us. This includes national research, data from the Crime Survey of England and Wales, information from local domestic abuse support service providers, safeguarding data, police data, and feedback from a range of stakeholders. We've also had feedback from victims and survivors of domestic abuse, including children and young people, where a vital source of information has shaped the content of the strategy. And we've listened to the views of professionals and partner organisations, as well as taking feedback from the adults and the children's safeguarding boards. In terms of the content of the strategy, all of the available information was used to develop the proposed strategic aim and priorities. The strategy has 4 overarching priorities. It says that the partnership will prevent domestic abuse, support victims and survivors, hold perpetrators to account through robust enforcement by the criminal justice system and support them to change their behaviour, and work together in partnership to deliver a coordinated community response to tackling domestic abuse. This includes involvement from all statutory partners, schools and education settings, as well as victims and survivors, the wider community, community-based organisations and businesses. Tackling domestic abuse will require the whole community to work together to take a shared approach. In terms of governance, the delivery of the strategy will be underpinned by robust performance arrangements and a strong commitment to accountability. The Staffordshire Domestic Abuse Partnership Board will develop a detailed action plan which will outline specific actions, responsibilities and timescales which will be required to deliver the domestic abuse strategy. Through the Domestic Abuse Board, progress against the action plan will be monitored, underperformance will be challenged, and we will hold each other to account for delivering our shared priorities. Work has already begun to develop the action plan. Some of the activity will include communication and awareness training so that everybody is aware of domestic abuse, what the signs are and where to go for help. Training and workforce development so that the partnership workforce is equipped to recognise domestic abuse and signpost to appropriate support so that people can take steps to safeguard victims and their families. Improving the quality of data and ensuring that the data we have can be used effectively to measure performance. There will also be a focus on the criminal justice system, including reviewing and refining partnership approaches to managing perpetrators to ensure a joined-up approach which holds perpetrators to account and keeps victims safe. This work will also consider the support provided to victims of domestic abuse as they go through the criminal justice system. We will work together with partners to review and improve our existing performance framework, which we will then use to measure the impact of our partnership activities and our progress in delivering the strategic priorities within the strategy. This will include incorporating the voices of those with lived experience into our evaluation of impact, ensuring that their views on progress shape the continuous development and improvement of our activities. In terms of next steps, the partnership consultation on the strategy finished at the end of October. During November, local domestic abuse support service providers facilitated engagement with victims and survivors on the content of the strategy, and initial feedback is being reviewed by officers, with an updated draft strategy and draft action plan will be presented to the Staffordshire Domestic Abuse Board in December. The draft strategy, which will reflect any comments that you make as a committee today, will be shared with Cabinet for their consideration on the 21st of January next year. Cabinet will be asked to grant delegated decision-making authority to the Deputy Chief Executive and Director for Economy, Infrastructure and Skills in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Resilience to approve the final strategy on behalf of the County Council once that consultation with stakeholders has been completed and any final feedback has been considered. And we're happy to take any questions today. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? Or yep, Councillor Edgela.
Thank you very much and good afternoon everybody, and thank you for your presentation. And how closely do you work with Staffordshire Women's Aid, you know, and where do they fit into all this? I mean, there's probably a lot more going off in the homes than we know about actually. And do you have any do you do any work with, I know a particular lady actually that's teaching ladies and children self-defence against people that are, yes, these sort of people that we're talking about. So I wondered if you do any work with that, with those cohort of people, you know, and if not, I would like a conversation with you about that. Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edgela. We work really closely with Staffordshire Women's Aid. They're one of the providers that we commission to deliver the services that we provide as part of the commission service. In terms of working with people that are able to sort of support sort of self-defence, that's a further conversation that we can have.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's really important. It might help some of these people, that, even men and women, but this particular lady looks after the women's side of it, shall I say. Thank you.
Reverend Metcalfe.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to take the precedence over any councillors who want to ask questions, but if I have the opportunity, thank you very much. And thank you very much for your report. Just to introduce myself, I'm a co-opted member, not a councillor, on behalf of the Church of England, as it happens. I've got two areas of questions, if I may. The first is to ask what kind of transition has there been between the joint original Domestic Abuse Board and the two separate ones? Have you had to start from scratch, or have you been able to transfer the strategy, or did it need rewriting totally, or what? I'd have thought that in one sense you could have just broken up into two and carried on. So why do we need a new strategy, so to speak, and what are we actually looking at in terms of what's new? The other thing is really to ask a very general question about the second of your priorities, which obviously I heartily endorse and everybody else does, about preventing domestic abuse. Now, how do you actually measure prevention? And because you're only recording what hasn't happened, really, rather than what has happened. And how do you set about what is really changing a total culture, which is a sort of hugely long-term view, I would think, and really very difficult to engage with. I try and read in your report that you put forward a number of educational steps of one sort and another, but we're looking at something that's been, in a sense, almost endemic in society, and I just wonder how that kind of culture is really going to be engaged with and really changed in a way that's measurable, that's really tangible, and that really brings huge benefit to the community. Just question that, you know, it's an aspiration. Can it be achieved? Thank you.
If I pick on the first part of your question, which is around the transition from the old board, we needed a new domestic abuse strategy anyhow. The old strategy had come to an end. It ended in 2025. So what we carried out jointly across the Joint Partnership Board was a domestic abuse needs assessment. So that informed the Staffordshire strategy. It also informed the strategy that the city have developed. I was the co-chair of the Joint Domestic Abuse Board with a colleague from Stoke-on-Trent. That colleague from Stoke-on-Trent has retired, and the new chair of the Stoke Domestic Abuse Board, I am in regular and close contact with. I am the chair now of the new Staffordshire Domestic Abuse Board. So there has been some continuity, and a lot of the members that were on the previous joint board continue to be on the board that we've got now established for Staffordshire. So what we're doing very much with this Staffordshire focus strategy is really focusing on what across the Staffordshire footprint we can do to make a difference. So I think in terms of transition, we continue to work really closely with Stoke because we recognise that borders aren't a full stop and that people live on either side of that border. We've still got a jointly commissioned service that's jointly commissioned between ourselves, the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner and Stoke-on-Trent. So it's really important that our strategies do reflect that we continue to work jointly. But I will hand over to Becky, who will be able to answer in a bit more detail about how we prevent domestic abuse. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Prevention is a really key element of our strategy, but it is quite tricky, particularly around the performance management, because you are trying to measure something that hasn't happened. The whole point of prevention is stopping things happening before they occur. There isn't really a one-size-fits-all. There isn't going to be an action, a single action that we can do that will resolve prevention. So it's a group of actions, really. It's around things like raising awareness, you know, right from the very early ages. So how do we raise awareness with children, young people from the youngest, you know, all the way through people's life courses? How do you raise awareness of communities, both of what domestic abuse is and what the signs are to look out for? Some of it's around challenging some of those cultural stereotypes and myths. Again, that's quite a challenging thing to do because some of those, as you've said, are quite embedded within our society. But actually there are things that we can do to start those conversations at the earliest time possible. Some of that's around educating and awareness raising of our own workforce, so making sure that they are absolutely equipped to recognise and address domestic abuse when they come across it, but also support the people that they're working with to recognise it and take steps as well. And I think one of our key elements of our prevention activity is around education, and not just education in schools. So education in schools is absolutely a key part of that. And in Staffordshire, we have a PSHE coordinator, well, 2 PHSE coordinators who have produced a pack for professionals around recognising domestic abuse and violence and actually talking about that in an age-appropriate way with children and young people. But actually, it's more than just schools. It's how do we educate the wider community? How do we reach out through community-based organisations like your own, like other community-based organisations that have been mentioned, so that actually we are taking that coordinated community approach. So it's not a straightforward single answer. I guess it's a multitude of activities that added together will attempt to prevent domestic abuse. In terms of measurement, we're going to be working on the performance framework. So we do want to put performance measures in to measure everything we do out of this strategy. In terms of prevention, it's a variety of things. I mean, very long term and probably 10 to 15 years long term is you'd want to see the eradication of domestic abuse. In the short term, you're not going to see that. In fact, as we raise awareness of domestic abuse, we may see an increase in reports because people are more aware of it and therefore they report more. It's things like if we're doing awareness raising activities, how confident do people feel at the start, how much do they understand, and how do we measure their understanding and confidence at the end of those sessions. So again, it won't be a single performance measure, it will be a group of performance measures that added together will let us know how well or not we're doing around prevention.
Thank you, Chair. The external reviewer praised the LADNO improvements, has praised the LADNO improvements. Can we quantify the reduction in delays or backlogs since the new power by tracker and leadership changes?
Would you just read the question, please?
Yeah, it's fine. The external reviewer praised the LADO improvements. Can we quantify the reduction in delays or backlogs since the new power by tracker and leadership changes? Thank you.
I've just been advised that that's actually not the... so I think that question might be in relation to the next agenda item.
Yeah.
Not domestic abuse, that's LADO.
Okay, my apologies.
No, no
I jumped the gun on that one. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and thank you very much for the report. I've got two questions. One is specific to the report and the other one is more general. So the specific question I have pertains to the 925 referrals that were unable to be accepted. Very simply, what happened to those people? And then the more general question, now I was the cabinet member with responsibility for this as part of my portfolio, among many other things. And I do have some experience in this. Obviously, I was the chairman of Safer and Stronger strategic group as well, so we had these discussions very regularly. My question is, if we have 34,947 victims over 16 and 8,595 children under 18, firstly, I'd like to understand how it's categorised as 16, under 16 and over 18, or the other way around. But I'd like to know, and that was between 23 and 24, as Reverend Metcalf said, you know, how do you measure success? So are we saying that because you're introducing this, when we already had quite a robust way of dealing with this subject and these victims and perpetrators, you know, are you saying that this time next year we'll see a reduction in that figure, and that's how we measure our success with this project? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. In terms of the 925 referrals, they're referring to referrals that were not accepted by our safe accommodation providers, so our refuge provision. So how the refuge provision works is there is a national database where available bed spaces are put onto a national database, and then individual organisations or refuges are contacted with referrals to say, can you house this individual or family? The reason why they weren't able to be housed was a variety of reasons, which I think we've kind of mentioned in the report. Things like complexity of needs or size of family or age of family members. What would happen is if they're not able to be housed, because the refuge providers work collaboratively across the country, then other provision would be looked for them, potentially outside of Staffordshire. So I'm not able to give her what happened to each of those individual 925 people, but actually, as you wouldn't expect, but what would have happened is they would have gone back out to the national database in terms of, is there any other provision that can support these family-specific needs?
If I can just come in there then, so how do we track? Do we continue to monitor those incidences, those people? Because do we have any control at all about what happens to them after they leave the county?
I'd need to check that with our refuge providers, if that's okay, yeah. In terms of the other point that you've made, so yeah, the 34,000 victims that's quoted in the report, that is the Staffordshire prevalence based on the Crime Survey of England and Wales. So the Crime Survey of England and Wales isn't broken down into localities, but it says how many people nationally self-declare as being victims of domestic abuse. And then we've used that figure with our local population figures to estimate if there's that many nationally. Based on our Staffordshire figures, what does that look like for Staffordshire? That's 34,000 people. It's an estimate, it's not an exact count. The reason why it's not an exact count is because we know that lots of people don't report. So with the Crime Survey of England and Wales, that will be people who have reported to the police, it will be people who have sought out support, but it will also be people who've answered the survey to say, yes, I'm a victim of support, but have never sought support anywhere else. So they may not be known to any other services. So we estimate in Staffordshire there'll be 34,000 victims, but not all of those victims will have reported to the police, and not all of them will be known to service. In terms of the 8,000 children, that's police figures, so that of the reports made to the police, those 8,000, I think it was 8,500, I don't know the exact figure, but they're children in households. So the Domestic Abuse Act requires us to identify children as victims in their own right. So that will be children who are witnesses and observers of domestic abuse, as well as children and young people who may be you know, a victim of domestic abuse in their own relationships, you know, for example, adolescent relationships. That doesn't equate to there's 8,000 incidents. It may be that in one household there's 5 children or 6 children. In terms of performance measures, as I mentioned in terms of my answer to the prevention question, actually in the short term, we wouldn't expect to see a reduction in the figures, because actually what we want is more people to come forward, more reporting, both to the police and accessing support, which is why I'm talking, if we're looking at a reduction in domestic abuse figures, that is a much longer term measure. In the shorter term, what we'd want to see is some of those hidden victims coming forward and seeking out support. So the performance framework that we're developing will have a whole host of measures. So it will be reports to the police, do they increase, support, people accessing support through our support services, etc., etc. So no, next year I wouldn't imagine we'll be coming back to you to say it was 34,000, now it's 32,000, because actually that work will take longer to achieve.
Thanks so much for that explanation. It's not simple, is it? I do find it a little bit misleading that we have those figures on the report and that's what we're working to, when actually it's not. It's actually more, isn't it? Is what you're saying, because they're not reporting. But I don't know how you get over that. So thank you.
Steve Bell?
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the report and for the answers so far. Very much appreciated. And it's just a very sad topic, isn't it? One of the things that I realise you're going to be producing a new detailed action plan. What is going to be new in it, though? Because when I'm reading the report, you know, you can see the kind of patterns that have gone on for a long time and the kind of strategies that have probably been implemented year after year. And I'm not denigrating them. It's just the fact that I'm looking to see something new, and I'm struggling to find what's going to be innovative in this approach, because I agree with you, if we can get 50,000 reported, I think that would be a success, because it would be showing, you know, a real change in attitude and culture with regards to this. And I'm especially interested in the children who, you know, was mentioned earlier, 8,500.
Yes, so I think it's fair to say that we are building on what we've done before. So I think one of our colleagues asked whether we're starting from scratch because we've got a new board. We're absolutely not starting from scratch. We do have an established partnership. I think it's absolutely recognised that domestic abuse is an insidious part of society. We're not going to have a magic wand that's going to resolve that overnight. I think some of the things that we will be building on, I think we are expanding the reach of our domestic abuse board, so the partners that we have around the table to address the needs that we've identified. So there have been some needs identified, particularly around sort of challenges within the judicial system. We are inviting the Crown Prosecution Service and Her Majesty's Court Service to be part of the Domestic Abuse Board, so we can work collaboratively on some of those really knotty problems that we need to resolve. I think the other thing that we are going to build on, it's not new, we've always attempted to engage with victims and survivors. Actually, we want a real focus on that. So actually, how do we do more than just engage and consult with them? How do we actively work alongside them to co-produce some of the solutions? Again, I don't think these are brand new things, but they are the evolution and the development of the stuff that we've already been doing. And we are continually looking out for good practice. If anybody around the country, any other local authorities crack it or make a little bit more progress, we will be looking at what they're doing and learning. But I don't think the strategy presents an entirely new way of working. I think it's building on what we've done so far, what the situation is today, and what are the specific actions that we need to take over the next few years to make a measurable difference.
Can just follow that up. Is there any evidence-based research internationally, not just nationally, of strategies that have worked, which could be incorporated into the approach here?
Yeah, we have made a commitment really to look at wherever the good ideas come from. I think we're open to them. I think our strategy is common to a lot of strategies. The things that we need to do to tackle domestic abuse is that prevention stuff, which is really tricky, but actually we're really focused on that. Then what do you do to support providers? How do you turn the tap off of domestic abuse? And that's actually tackling perpetrators quite robustly. And then what do we do to make sure everybody's involved in those conversations? So I think if you pick up domestic abuse strategies from anywhere, those are the kinds of things that we'll be working on, and picking up any particular innovative good pieces of good practice. But yeah, international, we wouldn't dismiss something because it's international. We would take good practice and good ideas from wherever they come.
And I'd certainly welcome feedback on some of those case studies, because there's a lot to be learned from international case studies, in actual fact. Thank you.
Councillor Edgeler.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Children, I really worry about the children that's living in a domestic abuse situation. And from my experience, you know, living experiences, having fostered and adopted a child that had lived through that encounter, early intervention with these children, because if not, and the problem we've got really, we know that mental health services are stretched, and these children probably need a lot more guidance and help in their early years, because nobody knows what impact it's going to have on them in later years. So I plead with you, whatever you do, please, the children are really early intervention with these children and do all you can to help them, because it'll have a very big impact on their future lives. Thank you.
Councillor Wallens.
Cheers, thank you. And, you know, I know cases vary depending on the severity of it all when it comes to domestic abuse and so forth. But are frontline staff properly supported, or are they overburdened by the amount of work that they have to deal with, obviously, as I said, depending on case by case of domestic abuse and so forth?
So yeah, one of the key elements of our strategy is around how we're supporting and our you know, colleagues across the organisation, both in terms of their awareness, training, confidence in responding to and dealing with domestic abuse that's in front of them, but also them as individuals in their own right. So we do have a domestic abuse champion scheme within the organisation. So people who are county council staff who volunteered to be domestic abuse champions, and there is kind of a source of expertise and peer support for their colleagues around domestic abuse. So we are looking at what support do staff need. One of the actions in the action plan will be to do a bit of a needs assessment across our workforce in terms of what support, training, awareness do our staff need around domestic abuse, where are the gaps, and therefore what do we need to do to fill those gaps. So that will be an action within our action plan.
Can I just come in as well and just say we do work really closely with our colleagues, so to reassure Councillor Edgeler, our colleagues in children's services, to ensure that that early intervention absolutely is a real focus for us all, and also ensuring that colleagues in children's services are also trained to identify what those sort of possible signs are of domestic abuse.
Thank you. And just got the one more. What is the time scale for when the, you know, when a report comes in to the end result of the kid going into care or getting the right support that he needs and so forth?
I'm not able to comment on that.
Do we have any further questions on this topic?
Chair, as Councillor Kelly has had to leave, she has passed a couple of questions on to me. May I ask them on her behalf?
Certainly,
Is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
It's a couple of questions that Councillor Kelly put. One is in connection with rural areas and asking whether or not there's improved services to help victims and allow them the opportunities to leave, because she felt there was a reduced reporting in rural areas. So, and then the second one is around specific issues where there is counselling for the child following a domestic abuse incident, and she was asking whether or not it's still at the parental discretion for them to stop that counselling at any time, even though school and courts advise it should go ahead.
I can take the question on the rural question. So yeah, there has been some research that suggests that actually some work done by the National Rural Crime Network into some of the additional barriers and challenges that people living in rural areas face in terms of disclosing domestic abuse to begin with, but then also accessing services. The Crime Survey of England and Wales, because it is a national survey, looks at people in both rural and urban areas, and there doesn't seem to be a greater prevalence of domestic abuse in rural areas, but as I said, there may be actually additional barriers and challenges that they're facing. One of the things that we're really keen on doing, I think I mentioned it in terms of one of our previous answers, was in terms of engaging with people from across the communities of Staffordshire, so people from rural areas to understand what are the barriers that you face and how do we make it easier for you to access the support and services that you may need. So that will be... And we'll be doing that across all communities. So we know domestic abuse is underreported across all communities, but that some specific communities, rural communities being one of them, may face additional barriers and challenges. So one of the things that we will endeavour to do is make sure that the work that we do to engage victims and survivors is actually as inclusive as possible of people across all of the demographic backgrounds of Staffordshire. In terms of the question with regard to whether a parent has discretionary powers to stop their child accessing counselling, that's not something within my knowledge base to answer, but it may be. I know we've got the Director of Children. Yeah, so our Director of Children's Services has said yes, parents do have discretion to stop that counselling.
Thank you very much. Do we have any further questions on this topic? No? I am conscious of time because we've got another two points to go through. So, okay, that's wonderful then. Thank you very much for coming and answering our questions today. If we can then move on to Children and Families Strategic Improvement Plan. Okay then, so moving on to item 4, Children and Family Strategic Improvement Plan. I'll hand over to the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Nick Lakin. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Children and Family Directorate have been on an improvement journey since the last local authority children's services inspection in November 2023, which ended up with a requires improvement result. The improvement was rapidly accelerated under the leadership of the new Director of Children and Families in July 2024, and this has now been further accelerated with the leadership structure and planned service restructure going into 2026. Therefore, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee are being asked to consider the revised strategic improvement plan and note the accelerated improvement work being undertaken. The background: Staffordshire County Council Services for Children in need of help and protection, children in care and care leavers, were last inspected under the Inspecting Local Authorities Children's Services Framework in November 2023. The outcome of this inspection was that the overall effectiveness of our services for vulnerable children and families and for care leavers in Staffordshire required improvement. The quality of services being delivered for vulnerable children deteriorated since the last full inspection, which occurred in February 2019, at which time children's services were graded as good. The four main areas which were highlighted as areas to improve were the quality and effectiveness of management oversight of contacts, referrals and assessments in the front door, the effectiveness and impact of performance data and quality assurance to drive practice improvements, the effectiveness and oversight of allegations against those in positions of trust undertaken by the local authority designated officer, LADO, the effectiveness of partnership working, particularly with housing and health partners, to improve children's access to dentistry, and for children in care with more complex health needs to get timely assessments and support and ensure that care leavers are not placed in unsuitable temporary accommodation. Previously, the improvement plan was heard at overview and scrutiny in February 2025, at which time the leadership restructure was noted, but had not yet fully progressed. Since that time, a leadership restructure took place in order to align strategic leadership into areas of focus. This will provide more capacity and clarity of line of sight, key areas of service for children and families, in key areas for children and families. We have now permanently appointed to all the key senior leadership roles with the Deputy Director and Assistant Directors for Children in Care and Care Leavers, having joined Staffordshire County Council in September, alongside an interim Assistant Director for Safeguarding. With the full leadership team now appointed to and interim cover arrangements in place, it's enabled improvement work to be refocused and progressed at pace, as evidenced by our revised strategic improvement plan. The revised strategic improvement plan outlines how we will deliver our strategic ambitions for the children and young people in Staffordshire to be happy and healthy, to be safe and belong, and to enjoy and achieve. The priority areas of focus are effective leadership that drives quality services, child and family-centred co-production, family decision-making and empowering families to stay together, a skilled and sufficient workforce, early intervention and prevention, the right service at the right time, a high-quality practice which delivers positive experiences and progress for all children and young people across children in need and children protection, children in care and care experienced young people. This aligns to the strategic plan. I now hand over to Bernie Brown here, who will give you a more in-depth look at the plan.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start, if the Chair is agreeable, by introducing some of my additional team, some of whom are sat here and some of whom are sat behind me and some of whom aren't here, because as you may be aware, we have Ofsted arriving next week, so some people are working on the preparation for that. Jenny, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Jenny Herbert. I'm the Head of Improvement and Performance for Children and Families.
Helder?
Hello, I'm Alice Tracy. I'm Assistant Director for Early Help and Prevention. Sarah Fox, Service Lead for the Independent Reviewing Officers for the East.
So Kelda and Sarah will be presenting on the care leavers item that follows this one, okay? So, the slides really are just a summary to add we've got the improvement plan, which is a more detailed roadmap around the transformation that is required for children's services. Children's services was graded requires improvement, but actually there were a lot of issues that I would suggest were really challenging, and the service that was being provided was pretty poor in particular areas. So the strategy presents a clear vision to ensure children happy, healthy, safe and able to reach their full potential. We've strengthened governance, and we've got obviously the appointment of a new strategic leadership team. Today shows you progress to date, the current context, vision and priorities, key milestones, and kind of general direction of travel. So we have completed the restructure of the leadership team. So I now have a new deputy director and 4 assistant directors. You may say, wow, that's a lot of people. Well, it's a very big service and there's a lot of risk associated to it. And what I would say is the previous restructure that took place in 2022 was inappropriate, it was ill-conceived, and it led to the outcome in 2023 where the service was downgraded because there was a lack of management oversight, there was a lack of leadership grip, and there was a lack of resource in the system. We've also revised the quality assurance framework, we've introduced practice standards, and we've launched something that's called TriX. Don't ask me what that stands for because I genuinely don't know. It operates in local authorities all around the country, and it is a set of policies and procedures. I'm not sure how you run a children's services without policies and procedures, but they weren't there when I arrived in July 2024. We have invested in supervision training for all our leaders and managers. There was a gap in terms of people's understanding of how you supervise staff in relation to complex cases and vulnerable families, and we commissioned from Research in Practice, who are a nationally recognised organisation who work on an evidence base to inform practice, and they have done a series of comprehensive training sessions on supervision with our leaders and managers. We reviewed the Strategic Partnership for Children and Families, and the Chief Executive chairs that, and Councillor Lakin and Councillor Higgins sit on that strategic partnership, and we have produced a revised strategic plan. In addition, we have procured a new case management system, Liquid Logic. The current case management system is not fit for purpose. It was raised consistently by Ofsted from 2022. When I arrived, there was a plan to replace it by 2028. Not acceptable. We've accelerated that plan. We got agreement for additional investment of £1.4 million to accelerate the implementation of that. That system will be implemented by October 2026, which is a full 2 years advancement on what was originally planned. The impact of leadership, we have a clearer vision and direction from us in senior leadership team and an improved coordination of activity. And obviously, these slides were written before everybody came in post, but to be fair, the last 2 assistant directors arrived at the end of last week and the beginning of this week. So we're a very, very new leadership team. And then just to add to their arrival, we've had the announcement of an Ofsted inspection. So the full impact of this revised leadership team and the new strategy won't be felt, I wouldn't say, for 12 months, but we will be, we hope that we will be further investing in the service in 2026. We have increased the awareness of partners about their responsibility, and I found the conversation about domestic abuse really interesting. Domestic abuse is not a single responsibility of how do I fix it, how do community safety staff fix it. It is a social ailment, it is a responsibility of communities, it is responsibility in the main of men to change behaviour, although there are male victims of domestic abuse. In the main, it is violence against women and girls. And child abuse generally, including domestic abuse, is something that communities have to be supported to call out and respond to and make their families and their communities and their children fundamentally, in my interest, safer. So it's about shared accountability. It's around improving management oversight and recording of supervision. We probably aren't quite there yet, but we are a work in progress. So key tasks completed. We completed the review of the local authority designated function. The local authority designated officer, for those of you who don't know, they coordinate the allegations around professionals who work with children. So if you're a teacher and somebody thinks that you have done something inappropriate, there might be a referral made to the local authority designated officer, and there is a coordinated multi-agency approach to thinking about, well, do they need to be suspended? What's happening for their own children? The Ofsted inspection in November 23 didn't feel that there was enough oversight and enough a clear process, and they didn't think that there was enough investment in the team. So there was an increase in the business support so that there's better recording of the cases and better tracking of those cases. And we also increased the management in that to give some capacity because of the volume of work that we deal with. That review was done, and we felt that we had responded to all the queries, but then we recommissioned the individual who did the review. He came back in end of October, produced a report in November, just so that we are, just to reassure you, not just doing a review and saying, right, that's it, we've finished that, because this is an iterative process. We have to keep going back and say, is the improvement being sustained? Is there anything else that we need to do? And we are continuing in that journey. That Children's Services is a journey of continuous improvements. Even if you get to good, you are only a step away from not being good. We've introduced a new front door model, so we've moved away from what was a MASH, an ill-functioning MASH, and a MASH that wasn't legislatively compliant. It is now legislatively compliant, and it is now an integrated front door. What that means, and I think some of you have visited it, so hopefully that was a positive visit, and you could see the kind of co-location of partners and the work, the collaboration. Again, you know, I'm really clear. Children can't be safeguarded by social care. They can't be safeguarded by a single social worker or a single service. It's a collaboration with families, with communities, with schools and wider partners in health, police, etc. So we've implemented that. We've agreed additional partnership resource. We've actually funded part of a police officer role and a health role from our DFE funding for Families First Partnership. We have given some of that money to other agencies to secure the strength of the integrated front door, that shared decision making, that shared oversight. We've got stronger management of core social work tasks and an initial partnership review of child protection processes, which we will continue to look at. We've got improved reporting to the Safeguarding Partnership, which is the partnership kind of governance of safeguarding in the county. And we have reinstated the designated lead for children with disabilities, which had been stripped out in the previous restructure. And actually, what you may or may not know is that children with disabilities tend to be more vulnerable to abuse and need really strengthened oversight and understanding of issues that they may face. We are now visiting children on child protection plans more frequently and plans updated. We've improved the timeliness and quality of the local authority designated officer service and improved management oversight of decision making in the front door. Because we are now legislatively compliant and we weren't before, that has seen an increase in demand to the service. That means that historically we have not been looking at and overviewing children who may have been at risk. And that also then links, if you think about it, to the higher volumes of children in care. Because if you don't address early on issues for children and they don't come into the service where we can support them, over time their issues will escalate and then they are likely to end up in care when that could have been prevented. So the investment that we are looking to access for early intervention and prevention will help us strengthen the support we provide to families and communities earlier, so that one, children are supported and safeguarding, and their families are. Children don't live in isolation, they live in families and communities. That's where the work needs to be done. And then we should see a reduction of the number of children who come into care. In terms of key tasks for children in care, we have seen partner investment to increase health capacity because the numbers of children receiving health assessments was poor. We've secured partnership funding to provide residential offer for more complex children, and that is a work in progress. We're not there yet, but there is some work being done around resources for children in care, and we have a sufficiency strategy that at some point in scrutiny you may want to see, but not today. And then we've seen improvements to personal education plans with training for schools about supporting children in care. And we've got a fantastic virtual school who do much of that work. In terms of the impact of that, we've seen Timeliness of assessments improve, but it's not yet at target. We've seen the interviews for children who go missing improve, but we've got more work to do in relation to that, and we've seen improvements in the quality of our personal education plans, which are those for those children in care. In relation to leaving care, we've got more employment opportunities available for care leavers, and the needs of our children in care are more visible. There's more corporate support from the services and from businesses, and more support available with setting up of home. So in terms of the current context, we've got a changing national agenda, which you may have heard speak of in the media, Families First programme, which is being led by Minister Josh McAllister. We've got the SEND white paper, which, as we know, was kicked down the road again. We may hear from that in the new year. And then we've got Best Start in Life, which is around early intervention for children in early years. Our self-evaluation shows a clear vision and commitment to improving children's lives, new leadership team, increased investment and strong political support, including the funding for new systems and leadership roles, adoption of restorative strength-based approaches, and we've still got pockets of poor practice that we're addressing. We've recognised the need for a cultural shift and a consistent understanding of what good looks like, and the journey ahead is acknowledged as challenging. We've still got significant improvement to deliver. I've already spoken to you about referrals and demand that have increased over time, and what that means for us. So the reduction in early help has seen an increase in children coming in later into care, but with more complex needs. And we can go into the detail of that, but you've got the slides there that show that data in kind of real time in terms of the volume increase that you can see on the, if I put the slides up it'd be helpful, wouldn't it? On the bottom right of the slide, you can see that huge increase by October 2025 of referrals, and you can see the massive decrease of referrals to early help that are slowly then increasing, but the average number of contacts and referrals to social care are shown there for you.
I think there's a problem with the screen. It's okay on
Oh, right, okay. Right, okay. I don't know why that's done that. Sorry, I can't read that without, so that's why I'm looking at my own. So the current referral rate is 388.5 based on all referrals to social care received in the last 12 months. But if every month was the same as October, our referral rate would have gone up to 637.1.
Per 10,000.
Per 10,000, thank you. I think that brings us in line with, we've been out of kilter for a long time with national and statistical neighbours, so we're measured. I don't know what's happened to the slides on the screen. We're out of kilter, but the way that we're working now and the practice that we've introduced has brought us in line, and you can see those kind of current and average performances over time. Just conscious of time. So the drivers of change are improving the quality of services, the line of sight and accountability, meeting need and demand, aligning ourselves with the national reform expectations with an emphasis on early intervention, and ultimately, which nobody's going to disagree with, making a positive difference for children and young people. So the last couple of slides just show you the vision and priorities, which I'm not going to go through. The vision is there to improve children's lives, happy and healthy, safe, belong, and for every child to enjoy and achieve their potential. And then you've got 5 blocks of work, 5 strands effective leadership, child and family centred, high quality practice, early intervention and prevention, and a skilled workforce. Those strands are all led by a senior leader, and they are driving the wider work that we are completing. So this is a very kind of overarching, and there's a much more detailed Gantt chart. If you like a Gantt chart, we can share a Gantt chart with you. But these are indicative milestones for the leadership recruitment, December 25, that's done. Corporate parenting arrangements to become more child-friendly. We have changed the location of the corporate parenting panel to the participation centre, and we are then building on the way that we run the meetings going forward. Families First reforms begin exploring with our partners how we're implementing that. Consultation for the wider restructure will begin, and the start of the new structure probably July through into 2027. Launching Liquid Logic in October 26, and hoping to complete the wider restructure at the end of the year, but it may run into the following year. So activities that with dependencies outside of the Directorate, obviously the integrated front door success is dependent on partners. Families First programme, again, and the wider partnership improvement, including the SEND improvement programme and the implementation of the integrated care system. We've got a Preparing for Adult project with adult services and a wider school engagement. And then governance and oversight. Obviously yourselves are critical to the governance and oversight of the programme, but we have monthly oversight by my leadership team, a corporate delivery plan, which includes the wider corporate parenting, Families First and sufficiency, which will bring additional oversight. And then the partnership oversight of the Families First Programme Board, corporate parenting, safeguarding arrangements, and proposing that we, subject to the Chair's agreement, bring this to scrutiny twice a year to do a kind of check and balance in terms of what's working well and any blocks to the system. And then I'll end with those lovely photographs of our young people on celebrating Care Day. If anybody has any questions, more than happy to answer.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, and I think it's great all the work that you're doing as well. It's really fantastic. I just wondered how are you as a how are you coping with the increase of the now that you're now going by what the legislation says with the increase of children coming in?
It's an increase in referrals, just to be clear. It's not well, we've put additional resource, agency resource in the integrated front door. We are looking to access additional investment to support that long term, because it's not a blip. So initially people were saying, oh, it's a blip, it'll go away. It's the new normal, because we are now operating a model of practice that is correct, so we will end up supporting more families through that system. So I think staff in the integrated front door and the wider districts should be commended. They're working incredibly hard. It's a challenge to keep on top of that work, but I think there is an acknowledgement, both strategically from the Chief Executive and the leadership team, and also politically, that additional resource is required in the longer term.
That's great, thank you. And then I saw a lot within that about prevention and helping families first, but what about reunification? What about support when a child is taken into care? And then after that point, if a parent can work towards getting the child back, is there much work being done on that? So
we have a reunification team, and we do work hard, but there is probably more of a focus, and obviously because we've now got very specific portfolios, Kelda is responsible for children in care and care leavers and that permanency journey. So as a child enters care, really we should be planning for how we return them back and reunite them with their family. We've not been very good at that always in Staffordshire, and we need to get better at that, because children belong with families where that's possible and where that's safe.
Councillor Wallens.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's quite easy to get mixed up between item genders when you've got multiple pages to have a read at and so forth. But it's a good job now we're on the right agenda to ask the question I originally asked. But yeah, thank you. And the external reviewer praised the LADO's improvements. Can we quantify the reduction in delays or backlogs since the new Power BI tracker and leadership changes?
So it's Power BI, and that's a data system. And I can't answer that question today without having, you know, the data in front of me. What I said in my summary is that we have seen measurable improvements in the service. We've done 2 reviews, but I would have to go and look at the data, which I don't have in front of me, to see if you want a kind of difference between is it 20 cases that are delayed or 50 cases. I'd have to go away and look at that. And just to be clear, sometimes those delays, if there's a criminal prosecution going on, or if items have been seized like phones and computers, that can take quite a long time. You'll all be aware of the delays in the criminal justice system for things to go to court. So sometimes that delay in terms of a case that is sitting waiting for resolution isn't on us. So what we're looking at is have our processes of recording oversight, and do we know what the explanation for the delay is? Is that recorded in the system? I can tell you that has improved, but in terms of actual numbers, I don't have that information.
Thank you. And I think it would be good to have the data available in a future meeting or after this meeting and so forth. And yeah, I do have a couple of questions more to ask. The NFA rate of schools has improved significantly from 64% down to 47%. What are the remaining barriers to drive these figures even lower? And will we see stable and sustainable thresholds that schools fully understand?
Sorry, which data are you referring to?
The NFA rate, it's on page 15 of the report.
I think my pages are different to your pages. I'm looking at the slides, you see. So
it's 4.3 of the item 4, page 15.
I think it's like the actual report. Priority 4. Have you got it in front of you? Can I come and read it off your screen? Sorry. Evidencing more application. Okay, so basically that means that when schools refer in, that now almost 50% of those referrals are being accepted, whereas before they weren't. And some of them, we'll never get that down to 0 because sometimes schools ring up and the issues that they have with children don't meet the threshold for a service under the social care services. So I think what we're evidencing and the messages from schools was that they weren't always able to access a referral because they felt that the threshold application was too robust. I think what we're seeing from that data is that we're probably getting to a space where that is a more accurate representation, but that isn't a figure that you would ever want to get to 0. Because that is the difference between the things that schools might be worried about and the things that require kind of more statutory, more robust intervention.
Thank you. And just one more question. About the leadership and so forth, the current leadership restructure. If any gaps reopen in the leadership in the next 12 to 18 months, what is the contingency plan?
Well, they've only just started. I can't imagine, she says, not turning around, that we're going to frighten them off that quickly. You know, the people that we've recruited all have a really strong background in children's services and in improvement. They made proactive choices to apply for these jobs and come to Staffordshire to support this improvement journey. They're excited about the opportunities. If there are gaps, we would fill them with interim staff. So if somebody suddenly, you know, there's some event happened that we weren't expecting, then that would likely be filled by an interim agency member of staff, particularly if it was a statutory function.
Thank you.
Councillor Edgela.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, and thank you for your presentation and all the good work that you're doing. I know there's a lot to be done, but it's not an easy job you've got, but thank you for that. My question really relates, and you've mentioned it, Bernie, about residential care, you know, and especially these children we place out of county, you know, how do we keep a track on them to make sure that the help they're getting, they are getting it? Because a lot of these have got very complex needs. And also, children going missing. I mean, when children are put in care and they're staying overnight in different places and they go missing, I know when I've done children's home check, I know we don't call them children's homes now, you know, but any children in care, and they go missing and that, you know, and the police have got no jurisdiction to be able to stop them, or the people looking after them have got no jurisdiction to stop them, so they can just go out into the... I mean, I've been in a situation where I've known one child be missing for 8 weeks before they're actually, you know, brought back. So, and then how do we help these children that's getting to the age now where they want to get into employment and that, and when they've got special educational needs? Because my understanding was years ago, and I don't know whether it still happens, employers had to employ 5 out of 100 they'd have to employ with special educational needs if you're complex needs. And I wondered if that's still happening. How do we help these children get into employment if, you know, the need arises? So really that's some of my questions. Thank you.
Sure you haven't got any more?
No, I could sit here all day, but as you know.
Yeah, I know that. So I'm going to go backwards. So I think the last question is one for scrutiny on send. If I'm honest, there is a plan for supporting those children into education, and but lots of those schemes that existed, Project Search, etc., have exited the market. We have got some connections with Project Search here, but it has become harder and harder for any child to get employment opportunities, apprenticeship opportunities. But I'm going to leave Tim to give you a detailed response to that. Helen, we can ask Tim to provide it outside of a further scrutiny process, but to give the detail.
There is also, within the council, there are also schemes within the council in other departments to bring children into
work opportunities, yeah. But Tim can give the lowdown on that. Missing children. Let's not forget, children go missing from home who are not in care. So it's not just a care issue where children are removed. And we do have some children where we can stop them running away because we have something called deprivation of liberties that we put in place for some children who are really worried about them going off and doing harm to themselves or others. So we have got restrictions on some children. We do return home interviews for our children both in county and out of county, and we do follow up why they're going missing, where they're going to, what's happening for them, what the risks are. I think we've got better at that, but it is a challenge, and it is a challenge for the police because it takes a lot of their resource, but it takes a lot of our resource too. and then if you link into how do we know how children are doing when they're in residential care, well, our children have social workers. Many of our children have independent visitors, so people who go and visit them in their children's homes, take them out and support them. And then we have independent reviewing officers who are responsible for reviewing the child's care plan, reviewing where they're living, what the quality of that care. And we also have our commissioning team who quality assure our placements. They go and do a visit to all of our placements to say, you know, very crudely, because it's not about the money, but we are paying X and we're supposed to be getting therapeutic support for this child, education, X number of staff supporting the child. Is that there? Is that happening? That's separate to the child's review, because the child's review is about the child, about their outcomes, about their experiences. But we do due diligence on the placement providers, and if we're not happy, we do change providers, we do change placements for our children. Our ambition is that with the investment that we've had, that we will be able to increase our own footprint of children's homes and provide greater support in county. And obviously, you know, as councillors, it would be really helpful if you advocated and supported the recruitment of foster carers, because the more local foster carers we have, the more the better experiences our children can have, but also it is better value for money to have Staffordshire County Council foster carers than it is to have independent foster carers.
Totally agree with you about the fostering, and I know we're short of foster carers, so I think it's something that we all could do, you know, really promote it in all the different areas that we go to, you know, promoting foster care. Can I just come back and ask about how we, sorry, criminal justice system. We've got children in care that's in the criminal justice system. What are we doing to help them or prevent them going, you know, down the wrong road, working with them so we can ensure that their future looks bright and not miserable? Thank you.
We have a prevention service within the Youth Justice Service. We commission preventative services. We do a significant amount of work with children who are on the edge of offending and try and divert them. I think there's some very successful projects. I went and visited one in Uttoxeter that works really hard to divert and has had some real success with some of our young people who they've supported into employment. Great kids who were kind of just going on the wrong path and have been supported to kind of divert away from that. But we've also got a really strong youth justice service who are engaged in you know, activities, education work with some of our young people about the choices that they make. But they're, you know, in a world where employment opportunities are limited, criminality is a choice and an attractive one for some young people who may be in really challenging circumstances. So there's something about our responsibility as corporate parents to make sure that businesses are engaged in providing strong opportunities and that our schools are engaged in improving the outcomes, the educational outcomes for our children, because the educational outcomes, and I think that comes to scrutiny in the new year, educational outcomes at Key Stage 4 for our children are not as good as they should be, and that immediately disadvantages our children on their route to employment.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, and thank you for the good work that you do. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. In direct contrast to Councillor Edgeler, I'm not going to ask you any questions. I just wanted to say, really, that I feel as if a new broom has come into the council. I feel that there's a breath of fresh air coming in. Congratulations on getting your new management team assembled. I mean, we went to the MASH, some of us, recently, and I've been before, and the difference was tangible almost. So I do get a very strong sense of confidence that things are changing and improving. And I think since you've been with us, Bernie, last year, I can see these kind of little green shoots appearing. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Of course it isn't. I'd love to know, I'm desperate to know, as I'm sure you are, what Ofsted will say. Also desperate for that send paper as well, that white paper. But really, I just wanted to say, you know, thank you, and I know it's a difficult job. You're all doing everything that you possibly can, and hopefully we are going in the right direction. Remains to be seen. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback, and I think that I'm hopeful too that Ofsted are able to see that. Interestingly, it's the same inspector that did the inspection in 2023, so she should be able to see the improvements because they're tangible. There's still a way to go. Let's not kind of get to patting ourselves on the back, because there's still an awful lot of work to do, particularly in cultural change and practice standards. But we have now got all of the conditions for that improvement. And I think the other important thing to say in political scrutiny is that the improvement of children's services is not and should never be a political issue. Everybody should be signed up to things improving for children, because they are the future of this county and the future of this country.
Thank you. I'd just like to add on to Councillor Wilson's statement there. We did visit the MASH, and it's
called an integrated front door now. It used to be called the MASH. It's
Yeah.
really important that.
Integrated
No,
front door.
it's I do it myself, so it's fine, but I need to correct you. So.
And it was very insightful, really informative, and very eye-opening actually, because I wasn't aware of just how many calls they get. But one issue that was raised while we were there was that Stoke referrals are significantly lower than Staffordshire. And this is because they, and have been approached several times about joining the integrated front door, but refused to do so. So my question is, with regards to like our Staffordshire and Stoke partnerships, could questions be asked and conversations had to bring them on board?
So why would we want to do that? We're two separate councils with two separate operating models. So I have a really close relationship with Neil MacDonald, who's the Director of Children's Services in Stoke, and know John Rouse, the Chief Executive. We operate different approaches. Historically, if you go back in time, which everybody in Staffordshire loves to do, no offence intended, there used to be a joint Stoke Staffordshire thing and a joint Stoke and Staffordshire domestic abuse approach and a joint safeguarding partnership, and they have disaggregated, probably under the leadership of John Rouse as the chief exec, and I totally understand why he would want that, because if you look at Stoke, it's a very different demography, and then if you look at the volume and size of Staffordshire, you would be competing for resource. We do operate on a single police authority, and that could be helpful. And obviously, it's an issue that we're going to have to grapple with come LGR, but we haven't got any decisions about LGR. And actually, Stoke and Staffordshire, quite likely under LGR, won't exist. But the reality is there are no benefits to children to putting those services together right here, right now. And you would be running a service, if you joined it up, that would have two leadership. So there'd be me and there'd be Neil, and we might have different approaches, we might have different views on what your thresholds are. It will become very complex and probably quite dangerous in my opinion. But it is something, and actually we are in dialogue about our respective ways of working, Neil and I, because we have to start to think about that ahead of LGR. But we are not having a discussion about joining up.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any further questions? Yes, Sir Steve.
Thank you very much, Bernie. Thank you for that comprehensive report and all the brilliant work that clearly is going on. You should be commended for that, without a doubt. I think one of the things that strikes me, and I'm afraid I'm going to go back in time, is how on earth did governance allow the position to end up being as it was? back in 2023. And what lessons do we need to learn from that? Because quite clearly, the people at the time weren't being asked the right questions.
I think you've answered your own question there. I think that what I would say to Scrutiny is you need to be more curious. I think it's commendable that you visited the front door. I think if you wanted to visit other services, you'd be very welcome to do that. And I think that it's important that you do that without my shadow falling over that. I'm very open to being scrutinised and challenged, and to respond to whatever questions you choose to ask me, if that is for you to be educated because you don't understand genuinely, or because you're concerned about something. I think most of you that know me know that I'm available and I'm responsive to questions and queries about the service or any concerns you've got about the wider community. I would say two things. The right questions probably weren't asked, and there wasn't enough curiosity. There was probably a bit of complacency because this county was a good service, so everybody kind of goes, well, we're good, nothing to see here. But the previous leadership, I'm very open and very transparent. If you ask me a question, I will give you the truth. I won't give you the version of the truth or the managed truth. You will get, actually, there's some risks here, or actually, no, this is a good service. And I think people tried to make the service appear to be better than it was, and some of that was because, and I'll be really blunt, that they didn't understand child protection, and they weren't well informed. And then I'd go further than that and say when they did the restructure in 2022, they didn't listen to staff, because staff were saying this won't work, it's dangerous, and that has borne truth.
And just to follow that up, I think what would be really useful is that if, for example, a paper on emerging risks and mitigations could be presented, because if we could be told about, you've mentioned there are still some areas that if we look under the bonnet we'd be concerned by, to have those absolutely clear in the report.
I think it's quite likely that Councillor Lakin will want to bring that forward following the inspection next week, because and it will probably be useful, subject to the Chair's agreement, if we put that in for maybe February, March. I know that we will get the report on the 27th of January. So the Ofsted report will land on the 27th of January. So we won't be able to comment or share the outcome prior to that. But subject to Councillor Lakin's view, it might be worth putting an extra scrutiny in so that we can do precisely that. What is the outcome of the report? What are the ongoing risks, and how are we going to mitigate them, and how are we going to kind of fast track improvements?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can do that. If we look for around about March to add that in to the work programme.
Thank you. And I think that is exactly what you should be doing as a scrutiny panel.
Do we have any further questions on this topic? Oh, okay. Councillor Kelly.
You just said that we should be asking certain questions and that we should be more curious. I'm very new to this, and my background's maths. So I literally, what questions do you think we should be asking? What should we be doing?
Okay, what I'm happy to do is just not give you them now, but I can run through the kind of questions that a Children's Scrutiny Committee should ask. And what we could do, if you wanted to, Chair, is arrange for the LGA to do a session for you on scrutiny, what good scrutiny looks like. That could be put into your training calendar for 2026.
We have already had a session with LGA a few weeks back now, I think it was. So I think we've...
Was it well attended?
Yeah, we had quite a few, yeah.
I don't mean I'm not being rude. I'm just asking
was,
the question because it's important that that people, and it's
Yeah.
it's not a one-off thing, is it? This stuff is hard to learn, to understand. It's a good question.
Yeah.
You can tell you're a mathematician, you see.
So do we have any further questions? Okay. Councillor Lakin?
Just to add in what has already been said, Bernie has worked his socks off, without a shadow of a doubt. There was a system that was clearly not working. And Bernie's had a tremendous amount of pressure and foresight and determination, and we've had some very robust discussions. And it is being turned. It's a long process. It's not going to be overnight, but it has been. And Bernie needs to be congratulated, and the officers that work with her, and the new officers coming in. I know they support Bernie completely, and we, as a cabinet, we support Bernie. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be straightforward, but hopefully, it's going to go forward and go forward in the right direction. So again, thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure that we all in this room will agree with Councillor Lakin, and huge thanks to yourself, Bernie, and to officers that
You
have
better wait till the inspection next week
put in
before you
this
start
work
thanking
and
me.
effort. Right then, so we will move on to item 5 of the agenda, and that is the Care Leavers Strategy and Care Leavers Local Offer. Okay, shall I hand over to you, Councillor Lakin?
Yes, this is the Care Leavers Strategy and Care Leavers Local Offer. What is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee being asked to do, and why? The Care Leavers Strategy and Care Leavers Offer has been co-produced with our care leavers to ensure that they are meaningful, accessible and meet the needs of our care leavers. They've been reviewed and updated as part of the ILAC's improvement plan following the Ofsted inspection again in 2023. The Care Leavers Strategy is an overreaching document highlighting the commitment as corporate parents to ensure every Staffordshire young person who is leaving care is supported and given opportunities to thrive. The Care Leavers Officer is a statutory requirement and sets out all support options for Staffordshire care leavers across a range of key areas that help prepare for adulthood. Health and well-being, relationships, education and training, employment, accommodation and participation in society. We're seeking approval of both the Care Leavers Strategy and Care Leavers Offer that will be by the Cabinet. A background to the report: care leaver is a young person aged 16 to 25 who has spent time in local authority care for at least 13 weeks since the age of 14 and on or after their 16th birthday. Their specific legal entitlements to support and housing, education, employment and well-being. The Children and Social Work Act 2017 introduced a statutory duty for all local authorities in England to consult on and publish a local offer for care leavers. Under the ILAC's framework, there is a separate judgment for experience and progress of care leavers, which significantly influences the overall rating. An inadequate judgment for care leavers' experience will result in an overall inadequate rating. Ofsted will judge the offer on evidence that has been co-produced with care leavers, innovative responses to emerging needs and strong governance through corporate parenting panels to evidence the impact for care leavers. The Ofsted ILACS inspection in November 2023 identified that the care leaver offer for our care leavers was basic and was a barrier to supporting children to meet their potential in employment, education and wider outcomes. The recommendation was that this needs to be reviewed and brought into line with national expectations. Following the requires improvement judgment in 2023, several ILACS work streams were developed to progress the actions and recommendations of the inspection. An action for the care leaver work stream was to develop and review the care leaver's offer to ensure that it was in line with the regional and statistical neighbours, and have an accessible care leavers strategy to outline the plans of support. To address the specific deficits of Staffordshire's offer for care leavers, the budget for the care leavers offer was increased by £450,000 in February 2025 when setting the 2025-26 budget. The care leavers strategy and care leavers offer were both co-produced with our children. A copy of the care leavers strategy and care leavers offer is enclosed with this document. I'll now hand over to Calder, who can give another in-depth.
Yeah, I think you've done it, Nick, to be fair. I think the critical part for both of these, the strategy and the offer, is the fact that they were co-produced. And we have Sarah Fox here, who was part and parcel of the team working with our children to co-produce it. So I will turn to her in a bit in terms of identifying that. I think the critical element of both of these documents is the recognition that our children are vulnerable by virtue of the fact that they have had to come into our care, that they have lived a life of care or a care experience. That doesn't mean that they don't bring incredible strengths, resilience, experience, and so much to give. But what it does mean is for equity, we often need to offer a level of support to ensure that we are supporting them, to enable them to be the best that they can. And I think it was really critical back in 2023. It was a real quite damning judgment on our offer to our care leavers. It's really good that was accepted, that we have driven forward, and we now have an offer that has been developed with our children. So it's from a perspective of what they feel would make a difference for them, in ensuring that that goes forward, alongside the strategy, which is an easy read document, and you'll find that there's different ways of representing similar information, and this is to recognise our children won't necessarily work through a document from the top to the bottom. They'll find what is meaningful for them, how easy it is for them to engage. Some are visual, some want more detail. So that's why the strategy will have a level of repetition within it, but it's to ensure that all of our children have it as accessible. It doesn't fit for one cohort of children. So there's the information within that. And they sit alongside each other and are both front-facing. We ensure that we'll share these documents with our children on a regular basis, because this is for children up to the age of 25. So we have a responsibility and duty to support our care leavers to the age of 25 and to support them into interdependence, because whilst we all seek independence, it's about understanding who is around you, what does that look like, who can you depend on, what support comes from that. And I think the documents we should be really proud of our children, because I genuinely believe that this is our children led on this. They weren't a secondary position in this. It certainly was not a tick box exercise. And I'll just turn to Sarah really in terms of that process, because I think the co-production element is really, really important.
Please excuse me, I've got something in my eye. If you see me rubbing my eye, I'm not crying. As I've sat down, something's flown into it, so bear with. Thanks, Kelda. I absolutely agree. The care leaver strategy was very led by our young people in Staffordshire. It's been 11 months since I first met with them with our post-it notes to look at what sort of information they wanted included in this document. And it's taken a number of sessions revisiting once we had our draft to go back and say, okay, what do you want this document to look like? This is your information. How do you want this to be presented to the world? Right down to should an avatar be used? Should a real picture be used? What font do you want? They even considered neurodiversity to make sure that that it was inclusive. We wanted it to be the right level of pages. So the co-production here has been really, really significant, even around the visual team that have been involved. And they also visited the Voice Project with a range of young people and several care leavers to look at, you know, what key information did they want. And at one point I took a draft and they said, Sarah, you know, there's flowers on here. Why are there flowers on here? You know, or what's this pattern on here? We'd like it just to be more plain. We'd like it to, you know, can we have these colours? This is why, because actually we're being taken over by kind of what's in the background, and we just want people to see really what we want, and for it to just be very simple and specific. So it was very, very led by them. But yeah, you know, in relation to one of the key things was we wanted it to be accessible, and we wanted them to really shape it. And it wasn't just our young people that were involved, our visual team, our care leavers team, you know, Lindsay Dawson, who was here earlier on today. I've also worked with her around the local offer, and then we've been part of the ILAC stream. So we've met sort of every 4 to 6 weeks to look and monitor the progress to make sure this has really been done in a timely way. Yeah, so it's been a huge effort from everybody really, but we're proud of how it's turned out, and yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Bell.
Thank you very much indeed for the report. Congratulations on the new posts. What I'd like to know is, what are your top 3 risks in terms of the current strategies? What are the 3 things that are worrying you the most about what you've found?
Is that in relation to the outcomes for our children as they reach adulthood? For me, the top 3 would be, I think, their mental health. And the support that they can receive in relation to their mental health. I think what we see for our children in care is a more wrapped around offer, and quite often we see a gap as they step into adulthood. And for our children that have got vulnerabilities in their well-being due to their experienced trauma but don't have a diagnosed mental health illness, can really fall beneath within the gaps. So for me, it's that partnership working, that ensuring that they know who to come to, that point of contact, who can support them in managing that, and developing those strategies and that partnership working both with our health colleagues, adult health colleagues, and our adult social care colleagues to ensure that we work and identify our children early, recognise those that don't meet certain thresholds, but formulate plans that actually bring them the right level of support that cohesively supports them throughout their adulthood. We want them to be thriving in adulthood, and to do that, we need to get that support right in their childhood, but also that transition. So that's one. I realised I was going on. So the second one for me would be in relation to their housing, particularly considering our current sufficiency of housing. We work really hard with our district councils, and that we have a joint housing protocol. We are seeing more delay in certain areas for the transition into housing when they're 18, and often this is about getting the right kind of housing, the right kind of support. When we think about the age of children who aren't looked after when they leave home, it's moved to about 23, 24, I think now. And we expect our children who have had significant vulnerabilities within their lives to make this transition much earlier. So again, it's about making sure we've got the packages of support around our children and that they're meaningful. And I think my third one, but I will check with Sarah because I'm not the oracle of the 3. My third one would be networks, and making sure we get the networks right for our children right from the moment they're in our care. Bernie reflected on it before due to the question that you asked, and that's one of my passions. We need to be having those questions, looking at their networks throughout their journey. This isn't about trying to do it once they reach 17 and a half, 18. Our children will seek their families, but this is about, it might not be their parents, it might be a neighbour that they had a really good relationship with down the road. You know, it might be an auntie, it might be let's think broader. And I think for me, getting that right for our children right early will support all of those vulnerabilities into adulthood.
Thank you very much, and it's great to hear those three are so clear in your mind. So mental health, housing and networking. What? Yeah.
For me, I mean, the children should be no different from the children who are living within our families, our own children, and the concerns, worries and risks that we as actual parents experience. That should be exactly the same for us as a corporate parent. And one risk that's top of my list is that they fall into the wrong crowd because there's a disconnect between the advice and the support that could be given. So it's being able to maintain that support and that guidance so that they don't fall into the becoming wayward, for want of a better description.
Thank you for that. The lack of belonging is a real issue, isn't it? And what I think would be really good as a scrutiny committee is to hear at the next meeting that you're attending the progress that's been made on those three areas with some hard data as well. That would be really encouraging. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I'm 30 years old and I still need my support network, let alone at 25 with everything else. It's so nice to see that even that you're setting up that support network so that it can continue throughout their adult life. It may not be a family member, but just someone there, and to have the support later on so that they know that they can perhaps go to a doctor or someone else later on if they go through if they have mental health issues or if something happens. And it is reassuring to hear that that does happen. Thank you.
Reverend Metcalfe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the clarity for the way in which you presented the strategy and the offer, and for the work you're doing on that. I've got a very simple question, really. The offer very much depends on the relationship between the person and the personal advisor. It seems to be a lot hangs-on, the way in which that relationship develops. Does it ever happen? I'm sure that all the personal advisors are professional, very, very commendable people. Does it ever happen that that relationship breaks down? And if it does, is there a means of retrieving it?
With all relationships, there are better matched relationships than others. And I think the important thing is to hear our children within that in terms of how that feels for them. Do they feel heard? Do they feel listened to? So there are times when there may be working relationships that do change. I think the important thing for the offer and the strategy is that their point of contact will be their personal advisor, but not necessarily. They might have someone else. But to have the expectations of what we will offer them across the board, they should be able to hold us to account for that. The offer is really, really clear, and the strategy, we hope, because the accessibility of it should be really clear. So even if they have potentially not got the strongest relationship with a personal advisor at that particular time, their understanding of what we have a duty to offer them should be really clear for them. And that does, a personal advisor is really important, but it might be, if we've got that networks right, that might be Auntie Jean that lived down the road that is able to support them in actually challenging us, that we've got a duty of care to offer something else. But we do our absolute best to ensure that we have continuity of personal advisors. They are allocated to our children at 16, to enable them to develop those relationships so that when their social worker comes away, that they've got an established relationship. So that our intention would be that we'd have such stability within our teams that would be for every child in our care. I can't promise that, but that would be our intention.
Thank you very much. Councillor Edgar.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your report. My question actually relates to housing, and I'll put my borough hat on for a minute, because I'll be chairing the Community and Wellbeing panel tonight, and I'm just wondering what we as corporate parents and as councillors, and a lot of us sit on borough councils, what can we do to help you with this housing situation? You know, because I know it's a major problem.
I think critically we do have the joint housing protocol, so it's ensuring that we are working to that, so we've got consistency across the 8 districts. We understand the sufficiency issue, but it's about enabling us for our children to be able to apply for housing early, so not waiting until they're 18, so that they can do it at 17 and a half, and doing that consistently, and that time counting for them, so that doesn't sit idle, you know, that's not just a process, that then counts, and that is within our joint housing protocol, so ensuring that that happens. We are part of the National House Project, which supports some of our more complex children to transition into their own accommodation early, so before they're 18, with a real support network around them. And what our hope would be to have National House projects in more district areas. For us to do that, we do need boroughs to work with us to identify housing early, to enable us to support them into that accommodation early, and we then provide that complete wraparound support for them. So there's a number of areas in terms of us working with our borough colleagues in terms of housing. It's a really tricky area. You know, the sufficiency is a key element. For me, it's about really recognising the vulnerability of our children, and it's a co-work. We need to get it right with supporting them and getting them ready for that level of independence in amongst an interdependent kind of system. So we continue to have the support, but we do need to work alongside each other to have the accommodation available for them and the appropriate accommodation.
There's the supported lodgings scheme, for want of a better description. I knew, before I came into to this role, I knew absolutely nothing about it, and I don't know, looking around the room, whether anybody here actually knows anything about it. It's basically, if you've got a spare room, then you could potentially allow a care leaver to live in that room or be in that room, and you can assist them in their leaving care in that sense. It's potentially, I suppose you could say it's like a slightly different form of a fostering, but it's not fostering. But it's not widely known about. So within the boroughs and the districts, that's an ideal, for me, that's an ideal way to promote that facility or try and get on board individuals who could offer that facility, and then bring that back in to Kelder and the team, and then the appropriate sort of scrutiny, etc., of the volunteers would go forward. But it's not well known about, but it is an essential addition to the housing of care leavers.
Thank you for that, and that's something I will promote to our borough councillors at any rate in Stafford tonight. But following on from that, children that's going into their own accommodation, and some of them have probably not got parents to look after them, well, not parents, but people to look after them in a really critical way. In so much as what I'm trying to get at is, you've got children going into their own home that's probably got disabilities, they're probably on special allowances, disabilities. How do we stop these people that realise these people are young children, the children are vulnerable? How do we stop them being picked up by these predators in the outside world so they don't start taking their money from them and what have you? I don't know, it's a real tricky area, but it's something we should be checking on with these children that's on disability allowances and that, if they're living on their
And I think it's about the vulnerability of our children moving out on their own as a whole. And this is about getting both their personal and professional network right, as robust as we can, ensuring that they know who to come to at points of, who do you ask if you need to ring a GP but you're worried about it. It might be someone different to, actually, someone makes me feel really uncomfortable and quite scared. Who do I talk to in relation to that? It's about working with our partners, that if we know we've got vulnerable children, making sure that we're connecting with the partners to make sure that we're visiting them and checking in. And in addition to that is making sure that we don't just think of a house, that we think of a home, and we look at the environment in which that home is, because this isn't just about plonking our kids anywhere. It's about looking at, so what environment is right for them? What environment would minimise those risks as much as we can? And it's about holding firm and being, as Nick was saying, the parent that we would be to our own children, and challenging those things.
Councillor Wallens. Oh, you were next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'll do the same as Councillor Angela here and put my district hat on as well. And in terms of social housing, I know for myself, so of council rent and so forth from Bromford, and I know many districts and boroughs would have their social housing gave to Bromford, Midland, Hart and any other providers and so forth. How can we assure that accommodation that we put care leavers in are fit for purpose and not riddled with issues like damp and mould, especially if they've got underlying health issues or conditions? Thank you.
I think that is about our duty of support. We should be visiting our children regularly. We should know if there are issues. We should be going with them to look at their property beforehand. Our children are priority banned, so they would have an option to decline as well if they were offered a home that wasn't appropriate, and we would advocate on their behalf as well. So it is really about having the arm of us as their corporate parent to put forward that appropriate challenge should they be in any accommodation that wasn't appropriate. And we do not sit with unsuitable accommodation. So those that are in it, we have those as our most high-risk children, because we then have to look at the alternatives and the options for them if they are actually deemed to be in unsuitable accommodation.
Cheers, thank you.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. So I think the work you're doing is amazing. I've seen recently you're doing a programme where you're helping to get furniture so that when they do go into their own homes, they are already there. But with the increase in numbers and that are coming through the system, and the more and more children who are going to eventually become care leavers, have you future-proofed this? Are you ready for when these increased numbers come?
I think there's always that forward projection, because we know the children that come into our care, so we can kind of push that forward in terms of understanding the numbers. In terms of what are we doing, it's ensuring that we utilise charities as much as we can for our children. They get a leaving care grant, but it's a small amount if you think they've got to get furnishings, they've got to get flooring, they've got to get their curtains, they've got to get their white goods. So we will utilise charities as much as possible. We will, and EINS have now, so the, what's it called? Reusing. They've got a hub that they are part and parcel of all the work they've been doing around employment training for our children. They've also really evidenced that when they have white goods, you can just go and get them for free, because people have not wanted them anymore. So they're made sure that they're safe and ready for our kids. But some of our children have had some exceptional goods in that way. It's about self-proofing ourselves, really. A little bit like Facebook Marketplace, isn't it? That I would look on, I would do it. It's about ensuring we're getting the best value for money for our kids, and supporting them in finding the best options. But entirely future-proofing it, we know our numbers, we'll know as they come through, and we're always trying to ensure that they get the best value for the small amount that we give them to set up home.
Thank you. I'll make this one the last question, because I am conscious of time. With regards to unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, they have no support network, they have no family. So how, I mean, obviously we'll be treating them exactly the same. But in terms of like, who supports them? Who do they go to
Really important questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. One of the things that we make sure we do with our children who have come into our care due to seeking asylum is to ensure we do that network work right at the beginning. But it might be really different because it will be community networks, it will be friendship networks, it will be, you know, maybe the ref at the football team that they've started to play for. You know, that might be a safe person for them.
Yeah.
And so it's about really starting to unpick and understand for them who is their network and how do we build that. So a really similar concept, but often different people in their lives who are important to them. And they often will have quite a high level of professional network through being a child. But we've got to recognise that will diminish as they become an adult.
Yeah.
So it's about developing who's around you, who's important to you. And one of my goes-to is, who would you go to for emotional support? Who would you go to phone that GP? Who would you... And have those really basic questions with them and map it out for them. And that will change. But absolutely ensuring that we're looking at the wider context of what does a network mean.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah, of course, yeah.
Just to add to that, when we're doing our looked after young people's reviews, it might be that we refer to the Refugee Council, where young people can access legal advice, and we also look at where young people live, and often they get to know each other, they speak the same mother tongue, so they're able to communicate with each other, which is really helpful, and sometimes they know each other as well because their paths have crossed in different arenas, so we, you know, where possible, and if it's safe to do so, we enhance those friendships, and also we can contact the Red Cross and other charities where, if it's safe to do so in some rare circumstances where we have actually traced family.
Yeah, you know, in some circumstances they're arriving and immediately they're put somewhere and then they're picked up by traffickers or exploited in some way. Yeah, so it's really important to, yeah. Thank you. Okay then, do we have any further questions just before we wrap up? Okay. Just one quick one then.
Just a very quick one. On the outside, when we come to education and work, the partners that you've worked with, is that a broad list or local industry, for instance? Or is this an opportunity where I know from experience we've got massive skills gaps that these young people could actually support industry and doing that through education and placements within local business? I just want to know how broad the demographic is of companies in the area that's supporting this.
Really increasing. I think the work that we've been doing with EINS, and you'll have to forgive me, I can never remember what it stands for. I'm turning to you, Nick.
No, neither can
I. But they have developed a Pathways to Employment programme, and it's got a range of different options, and they are engaging with a wealth of different companies because they've got those connections more than we would within children's social care. And I think it's something in Staffordshire to be so proud of as a corporate parent, and that into those directorates working together for our children. And I was just reading the report actually this week, and I think they've had something like 35 offers of employment or training, and they've got 29 children into employment or training through those pathways. And they had something like the others were all in negotiations or kind of considerations. And one of the other areas that they are doing is about entrepreneurship. So also supporting our children to think about their own businesses. And I think that comes back to the skills, resilience, tenacity that our children have, often because of their experiences, that they could be really amazing entrepreneurs. So the fact that we've looked into that, and I'll say we, it wasn't me, it was in place before I started, and the difference that is making, I think we've had 6 children who have completed the course, which gives them an accredited qualification. They can go on to the next course and they would be supported into developing their own business model and their own. So there's a huge amount of work that's happening at the moment and real engagement with business, which is really quite impressive to see.
I can just add if you've got contacts with businesses that would like to join that scheme, then by all means, give me, come and ask me, and I'll put you in touch with the scheme, or Calder, and we'll put you in touch with the scheme so that they can contribute or assist with the children.
Brilliant, thank you. I might just have, I have a lot of apprentices every year, and they come from your normal standard homes, and they really struggle to integrate into the workplace. Trust me, it's almost day in, day in nightmare just trying to help them and support them. So, but yeah, definitely I'll let you know, Nick.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say thank you to you all for coming along today. It's been really encouraging to listen to all of the strategies and things that are happening moving forward. So I'd just like to say thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. And with that being said, we will now move on to the work programme.
Okay, so very, very quickly, because it is in fact only a week since we last did this, isn't it, and looked at the work programme. But even so, we have had a couple of changes. From today's meeting, I'll look to put in an extra meeting in March, because you haven't currently got one in that month, but you will have now, and we'll look to put that in for the Ofsted report. And then, other than that, there's a couple of changes to items that were due to come to specific meetings. And the one I think that has the biggest impact is the residential education future options, which was due to come in January and needs to now be put back to February. February is a very busy agenda, is the first thing. But I mean, I think I'll speak to the officer involved and see what we can do. It does mean that your January meeting is a one-item only agenda at the moment, and that's on the community safety strategy. So whilst I think that's a key piece of work that you will want to do, I'm not sure that it's whether or not you want me to look to put something else in for that meeting, or whether you're happy for it to be a one-item only agenda. And if you are, the officer, it's Catherine Mann actually, who will be attending to speak on that, it has asked that the item goes on at 11, thinking she could be second on the agenda. So if we're carrying it on as a one item only, are you comfortable for me to put the start time of that meeting back to 11? As is the two questions really.
Second,
22nd, is it?
26th.
26th.
Yeah, 26th January. 22nd, where are you?
It was.
Okay, I'll split two.
Yeah, Councillor Metcalfe.
Chair, this is a very simple one, but if you wanted something relatively brief to add to that agenda, the annual report from the county's SACRE, Advisory Council in RE, will be public, and I've asked in the past that it be received by the appropriate scrutiny committee in case they want to ask any questions.
So, absolutely, we could include that on the agenda then. So we perhaps need to... I'll consider the time, but if everybody is happy for me to, I'll send an email round, we'll include that on as well, and then I'll confirm by email what the start time will be. Is that okay?
Yeah. Sorry, may I ask, coming from today, we spoke about reunification for children, for families. That wasn't in the report today, but they said that that is something that they are doing improvements on. So I think that would be interesting to hear how that's working and the improvements they're making on that as well, if that's okay with you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Kelly, that's fine.
In which case, I'll add that on. That's not specifically for January, is
No,
it?
no,
That,
no,
but for the work programme.
Yeah.
Perfect, I'll include that. '27th, yeah, 27th of
January, was it?
27th of January, I understand the published paper will be available. So you as a committee couldn't meet before the 27th of January. Your February is, yes, very full. So we'll have a meeting in March.
Okay. We're all done. We're all done, aren't we? Okay. Okay. So the meeting is concluded. Thank you very much.